Good morning. I'm back with another interview for you. I hope you're all okay and enjoying seeing each other again and having some in-person lessons for change. You might recognise Carrie Radford, who I'm talking to today, because she ran the interview workshop that you did at the end of last year with Max. But today we're going to talk about Carrie's role at Texel and also how she came to be in that role and what she studied and why she decided to pursue that career. And perhaps she might inspire some of you, because I know that we have perhaps some budding lawyers out there. So I think this might be quite interesting for a lot of you. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Not at all.
The weird thing is, Carrie and I haven't actually ever met in person.
It doesn't really feel like that anymore, though, does it, Katie?
No, exactly. But ours has been a COVID relationship.
Indeed.
So we've got to know each other virtually, but hopefully soon we can meet in person. But I'm kind of giving away the answer to my first question in a way, because I was going to say, can you tell us what your role is and how long you've been at Texel, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I was going to say nice to see you, but I can just see your names. But nice to be back. I am Associate General Counsel at Texel, so I'm one of Texel's two in-house lawyers. And I joined at the start of May last year. And I came from private practice, as people call it. I came from a law firm.
Thanks. And can you describe a little bit about what your role entails on a daily basis? So we know what a lawyer is, but what does that actually mean, being an in-house lawyer at an insurance firm?
Yeah, it's often hard to kind of get your head around what different jobs do. And it's definitely something that when I was working in a law firm, I wasn't quite sure what an in-house lawyer's job or what an in-house lawyer's job at Texel would involve. So it's something I'd obviously researched when I was thinking about the job. My role is very varied. So I partly advise on claims, which as an insurance broker, we see where our insured clients suffer losses, which their insurance policies cover them for. So we would help our clients to claim on their insurance policies. And then I also see the same claims in a slightly different, or from a slightly different angle, because I might well help the client insured with their recoveries against other people, so not against insurers. I might advise to some extent on how that's going and keep the insurers informed. So there's a whole kind of claims angle. And I suppose when I'm dealing with claims, I have to think about what's actually happened. It's not really about the insurance policy at all. It's more about the bank loan or maybe the commodity trade that the insurance has covered. What happened along? Why has there been a loss suffered by our client? So there's a whole sort of story that I enjoy that side of things, and that sort of fits well with my background before Texel. Then I also advise on our insurance policy weddings. So yesterday evening and this morning, I've been talking to our Singaporean office about a new wedding for a new bank client, where they want to take our template policy and transform it to fit with their business, but also they've got various clauses that they're looking at. They're trying to improve for themselves to make their obligations easier to comply with, to make the insurer less, perhaps have different terms that they think might suit them more. So that what I would call sort of wordings specialist piece is interesting, because it is about the words, what they say and what they mean, and how when you reorganize them they can mean something a bit different, and how you can try to clarify the words so that everybody understands what they have to do. But then there's also another, something else that's going on when you're looking at the words, which is it a balanced contract? Is it intended to be a balanced contract? Who perhaps has the balance of power in a particular clause or overall, and how does that make a difference to what your contract says? There's a sort of a quasi-political job involved in wordings, which is also, I think, quite interesting. And then I suppose the third aspect of my job is as Texel's lawyer. So yesterday afternoon, I had a call with one of our team who looks after our office and Texel's business more widely, and we were talking about whether an access road to some buildings that we let needs to be resurfaced, and if so, who owns the road, how we might share the cost of resurfacing it, and whether the council have got anything to do with it. So there's a whole other area of my job which doesn't fit well with what I did before, but as a lawyer, I suppose I am trained to read stuff and not be kind of phased by kind of old-fashioned words or looking at things like deeds, because I guess part of the training that I underwent helped me to look at that kind of thing and enable me to try to break it down. So the third piece is not convincing, but it is. Anything else that comes into Texel that has a bit of a legal flavour might go to me or the other general counsel.
Okay, interesting. I didn't realise you got to deal with things like that. Exciting.
No, did I, Katie?
Okay, thank you. You've kind of touched on the next question a bit already, but I was basically wondering if you could tell us what you find satisfying but also challenging about your role, or the bits you really love to get your teeth into and the other bits that perhaps are a bit dull or boring but a part of the job, just so that everyone listening has a sort of a broad picture view of what it does involve.
Yeah. So things I really like writing. I like kind of committing ideas into words, which I guess I have touched on in different ways. And I kind of enjoy it and get a sense of achievement from being able to take on board information from people and from things that I read, and being able to make it clearer what needs to happen or what has happened, or set out the options as to where to go next. So that side of it I really enjoy. I enjoy the engagement that I have with other people, and I would say that both in-house and as a lawyer in private practice, you have a wide range of colleagues, and I think your colleagues, so at Texel, arguably my clients are the 30 brokers at Texel, so that's already quite a broad range of different clients, but then sitting behind those brokers is the deals, the transactions that they're working on. So I might interact with the client who's buying the insurance as well, and I would also interact with potentially the underwriter, or perhaps more likely the claims professionals within insurers. So to some extent they're my colleagues, and over time you develop those relationships, and I tend to find that the more you are able to develop all of the relationships, the better equipped I am to do my job, because I can speak to the person who I'm advising more effectively, and I hopefully understand more the way that they would like to receive my advice, the depth of the advice that they require. So that side of things I really like. I think one of the most challenging things is understanding the non-legal kind of technical background to what I'm looking at. So at Texel, that manifests itself in the transactions. So whereas at the law firm I worked for a long time, I did do work on international trade transactions and a lot of shipping related transactions, and more general kind of insurance work. I didn't do, or I did very little finance work. I did some finance work as a trainee lawyer, which has actually really helped me in the last year, but I did very little. So I had, when I joined Texel, quite a steep learning curve, or certainly a re-familiarization period of getting my head around bank loan terminology, and the kind of terminology that my colleagues at Texel would use every day and not think about. There's all sorts of acronyms and shorthands, and if you don't understand them, it's quite debilitating. And it can be difficult to ask as well, because these terms are thrown around so naturally that you really feel like you're behind the curve if you have to stop and ask, whereas people are coming to you to help them move a problem forward, not to kind of have to rewind and explain to you all the background.
Would you, sorry to interrupt, would you say
Yeah.
that's a positive in that it's good to be learning new things all the time? So it can be a really stimulating role because you can go and work in any number of different industries with the skill set you have, but equally that can be challenging because you're having to start again each time and adapt to that industry.
Absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely right. I think one of the things it's challenging in the sense that I think if you don't have the technical background, then you can't advise properly. So but what I mean by that is that you need to get from the people you're working for that information, or you need to work out how you can get it for yourself, and you need to take it on board in order to do your job, I suppose. But yeah, no, I agree. It makes it really interesting because I don't just do law in inverted commas. Actually, I advise on insurance policies, or I advise on how to insure some bank loan, or I advise on something much more specific is really the subject matter of what I do. And I really like how the different things I've focused on at different points in my career, many of which I wouldn't have said, or I really want to go find out about bank loans, or whatever it might be, things that I wouldn't have thought would interest me, but which have interested me and which I focused on for a period of time, have kind of weaved their way backwards and forwards into my day-to-day. So the 6 months I spent as a trainee doing finance, bank finance, structured finance, I never thought I was going to do that after I left that seat. And I didn't realize, I don't think, quite how much of it had gone in. But now I've seen it come back. And similarly, I have on my shelf a book about marine engineering with lots of pictures of ship engines, because at one point I was doing a lot of disputes involving a ship repair yard, and you had to work out whose fault it was that such and such had happened. And to be able to do that, you needed to be able to understand the bits and bobs and where they went and who put them in. So the technical side is challenging, but it's also really interesting. So I like that. Actually, one of the things I don't like is public speaking. So that's part of the job, I would say, but you can dial it up or dial it down, and people do. And it's both one of the parts of my job which I find hard, in the sense of kind of gearing myself up to do it, but I also get a huge sense of achievement from having done it. And so it's something that I like to do, but never work beforehand.
Understood. You're not alone in that, I don't think.
But I think that could be quite helpful, because I think that you can, think about careers and paths which don't completely match up with the stuff that you really love to do every day, but where you can see that the kinds of skills that you have, the kind of things that you like, broadly overlay, you can adapt your path to kind of fit, the things that you like, and you can also work on things that you should be better at, and no one will catch you out while you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good answer. Now we've had a question which sort of links in with one of my later ones, but I'm going to ask it now because it's a really good point. And the question is in-house less intense compared to an independent law firm? Is it more relaxed? Do you have more free time? And yes, I asked it because it said, I want to have a job where I have a good life, family and work balance. And I know you've got 2 young children, so that's a very relevant question to be asking you. How do you find your work-life balance, both now being an in-house counsel at Texel and when you were working for an independent law firm? How has that varied at all?
Yeah, it's a really difficult question. It's a good question, and it's a difficult one to answer. Yes, as Katie says, I've got 2 young daughters who are, thank God, back at school as of last week. But I too have made choices about what I do and how that fits with my wider life. And one of my motivations for coming in-house when I did, I definitely was thinking about work and life and balance, etc. But it was definitely just one part of the equation, I suppose. In-house, you lose some of the things that you have to do as a lawyer in private practice, which is beneficial in some ways because it gives you some time back. So as an in-house lawyer, I don't have to go out and market myself. So I was a partner in a law firm, and I did spend a lot of my time engaging with clients, not on matter specific things, but that might be in the form of just seeing people, having coffees, having lunches. It might be in the form of writing articles to make sure that both I was up to date with things that were happening in my area, and also to make sure that my kind of profile externally and within the industry was maintained. It might have been preparing for speaking. So there's that whole marketing isn't the right word, but there's that angle that you don't have to undertake as a lawyer in-house. On the other hand, some of that was really fun, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, going out and putting myself in front of future clients, and I really got something from these relationships. So it's a difference. There are pros and cons on both sides. You also lose a lot of the kind of admin that goes with being in private practice. So I don't record time anymore, which some people can't stand. It's just one of those things, I think. But you lose that. You don't have to do any billing anymore, which takes a huge amount of time as a lawyer in private practice. So that's quite nice. But on the other hand, I also don't supervise more junior lawyers, or not as much as I used to. And so I used to really enjoy the sort of training aspect to the private practice job, which I have less at Texel, although it kind of comes in and you can use those skills in different ways. I would say that it's a more supportive position in-house and a less competitive position in-house. And I think that you can feel more secure, in the sense that I suppose that comes back to the point about not having to compete for work. I mean, on the other hand, I have to say that the way that people work tends to be a lot about them. I should work less than I do. I think probably quite a lot of people would say that, and the pandemic has probably been particularly bad for that. I suppose another way of putting that, though, is to say that I have these 30 internal clients, and how they fare is in some ways even more important to me now that they're my colleagues than it was when I was a lawyer in private practice. So, to what extent that affects you and how you engage with your work and how much time you give to it, and whether you have a sort of more perfectionist style or a more broad brush style, those are all very personal things. And I think that many people who I know well, peers or friends or colleagues, would say that trying to achieve and maintain balance in their lives between work and home is something that they're continually working on. So I'm
okay. Well, no, it's given insight, definitely. I suppose from my standpoint, seeing you in your role, it's probably good in the one sense, like you say, that you have a bit more security and you're here now, and you can almost relax and just get into the role without that competitive element, like you say. But equally, all of us want a piece of you. You've suddenly got, it's great that you don't have to go out and seek the work anymore, but equally you're there for all of us in a way, and we might all need you. So you can be torn in all different directions, which keeps it interesting, but equally it's very busy for you and your mind's on so many different projects at one time. So it probably, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Yes, there's also said, can you complete your solicitor training contract in-house? Is that something you can do, or is it separate?
Yes, I think so. So I know that the rules about training contracts have changed in the last year, maybe, and I think the whole process has just changed, actually. But yes, I'm pretty sure that you can do your training in-house. But I'm definitely not the last word on that.
Okay,
so go find out. I'm sure that the Law Society website would be a good place to look to find out the nuts and bolts of that. But I'm pretty sure that insurers, for instance, sometimes do have trainee solicitors, and sometimes known trainee solicitors from, say, insurers go on secondment to law firms. We probably had some at Ince. as part of their what was a 2-year training contract, but I think now doesn't have to be. So yes, I think so.
Ince and Co. No, yeah, Clyde and Co. Just Ince.
Ince. It was Ince and Co.
That's where
yes,
you were. Okay, yeah. I'm just giving an example. All right, thank you. Well, that segues quite nicely into my next question, which is, can you tell us a little bit about your training? So what A levels did you do? What did you study at university? And then how did you continue into law in your first roles?
So I loved my A levels. I did maths, English, literature, economics, and French.
Wow, that's interesting. That's quite broad. A lot of people tend to go down either the maths or the English or the science route, but
yeah, no, I was really lucky. I really loved the sort of balance of subjects, and I made myself do French because I wasn't very good at it relatively, and I really wanted to be able to do it. And my gap year actually was living in France with a French family and going to school there. I was in the lower sixth in a French lycée just south of Paris, and that was basically when I learned to speak French, and I absolutely loved that. And actually that experience, which really surprised my parents and me, because I hadn't really planned to have a gap year or planned to go to France, or but it sort of just came about from a careers fair. That experience has really been something that stayed with me, and over the course of my career I've tried to find opportunities to be in France and to speak French and to use that over time. So that's sort of slightly curved ball, not entirely relevant, but it's a way that maybe it shows that if you have something that you're interested in, whether it's a language or a culture or whatever it might be, you can find ways in your career to try to bring that through. So I went from my gap year to university. I was at Cambridge, and actually my gap year helped me enormously when I started at Cambridge too, because there was a lot about my gap year that was really difficult. Living in someone else's house, someone else's family, and going to school in a totally different language when I really wasn't good enough to understand what was going on to begin with. It was really difficult.
I've lived in France as well, and it's not far away geographically, but culturally it's very different.
I really agree. And so I felt when I turned up at Freshers Week, like I could just, like, it just really didn't worry me, because I felt like what I'd just done was so much harder. And I was also, I think, really excited about it, having had a break, inverted commas, from school. I was really ready and excited to go to university. I studied law, which was kind of dull because I would have loved to have done history or English or something different. But equally, I loved my degree, and I liked the fact that because I studied law, I didn't just do the core subjects that you would do if you do a law diploma afterwards. I could also do other things, like I did international law, and I did human rights, and I did family law, and law and philosophy, and that, there were ways of sort of turning it into a broader, whether it's international development or a sort of arts subject. So I really enjoyed that about it. And then I went and worked for a law firm. I went and worked for a firm called White & Case, which is an American law firm in London. And I did that partly because I thought they would let me go to Paris as part of my training contract, which they did, which was fantastic. And I did 4 different seats as part of my training, which at the time was the common model, and so probably still is. And we were encouraged, as trainees generally are, to work in different areas of the firm and to choose or to apply for seats in areas that weren't necessarily exactly what you thought you wanted to do. So I did mergers and acquisitions and bank finance and litigation and arbitration when I was in Paris. And I think that breadth was really helpful to me, both as I progressed in law firms and also as I kind of have gone through my career, because it gives you quite a good grounding in the different disciplines. And it can, if you stay in a law firm, give you really good connections as well around the firm. So it can help you to issue spot and kind of go, I know someone to go and talk to about that, which I think can really help your confidence as you're growing and learning and starting somewhere. And then I moved to a firm called Ince, where I did insurance and maritime law. neither of which I'd ever studied or thought about doing or knew anything about. I didn't know anyone who was in the marine industry, although I now know that, you know, lots of people sort of, that's their life and their family and their background. But I found it fascinating, and I was so interested by the fact that the sea seemed like this old-fashioned thing to me. I didn't really know the extent to which more or less everything we consume and use is shipped. I hadn't really ever thought about it. But once I did, and once I worked in it, I just found the relationships and the kind of physicality of this thing, these ships, the sea, the people, these massive holds, the engineering side of it, and the fact that you can photograph it and look at all these plans. I just found it fascinating. So I loved that, but it also then sort of became a route into insurance law over time, and now on to where I am now. So total change.
Thank you. Interesting. So in some way the traditional route, but then the fact that you had to try these different seats exposed you to different areas of law, and you could try different things, which was quite nice to almost have a taster of different sectors and areas.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that it is a career where skills are seen to be transferable. And so the fact that I hadn't done maritime law and had no obvious affinity to it wasn't a barrier to going somewhere where that was a big part. And for me, it was always about wanting to do dispute resolution, really, and litigation. And so I was looking for somewhere where that was a big part of their practice. Yeah. Because I was interested in kind of the quality of my training and what engagement I would get early on, and being able to enhance things like writing and sort of being involved in drafting, and and I found that moving between different disciplines was possible. And I also found at INTS that it was possible to maintain and to develop different areas at once and to work across the firm. And again, I really enjoyed that, and I also have found that to have been a helpful thing to do, because it's given me more options as my career's gone on to move into different areas at different times, but keeping the connections and the understanding from other areas.
Yeah, great. Okay, so that's some good advice that if anyone's interested in law, that continue down that path, but you're going to have various options as you develop your career to keep it interesting and to find what's a good fit for you. Got a couple more questions. So Samira said, do you think an apprenticeship is a suitable way to get into law, or would that just be to give you a taster and you could then go on and study it? You think you can't? Am I right in thinking you couldn't do an apprenticeship and then stay in a law firm, and could you then qualify there, or do you need a degree?
So you could. I don't know to what extent you get kind of formal. I haven't come across a formal apprenticeship within a law firm, but what you do have is paralegal roles. So I did do a paralegal job, maybe between uni and law school, or maybe straight after law school, and before I went on to my training contract. So paralegaling is a bit different.
Like Meghan Markle in Suits.
It's exactly like that. Yeah.
She became a duchess.
I mean, that's the way of working in a law firm and seeing what you think of it and making connections. I don't know how that overlaps directly with apprenticeships, but you can go from a paralegal position into a training contract. And I think now, as I say, I'm pretty sure that you don't need to do a training contract anymore. Okay. And so part of the training is about showing that you have different forms of experience and sufficient experience to qualify. And I know that you can get at least some of that experience from a paralegal position. So definitely.
Would you advise people who are interested listening to sort of look up law firms in London, see what kind of apprenticeships or secondments they offer, and just sort of see what's available and
Absolutely.
Follow up on those?
Definitely. So many law firms do vacation schemes in the summer and sometimes at Easter as well, and that it tends to be 2 weeks, but it depends on the law firm. They're often very competitive. But it's worth the competition in the sense that it's a good opportunity to meet other people. It's a good opportunity to talk to people within the law firm and to speak with your peers. And often vacation schemes are a kind of not quick route, but an obvious and well-trodden route into a training contract. So yeah, no, definitely worth looking up. And if there are any law fairs that you can access, I'm sure there are lots, those are worth going along to as well, and listening to see what people have to say, asking questions, etc.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I've just put something on the chat. I know that an organisation called the Sutton Trust do some summer courses, because we've got involved in one of them, and they have something called Pathways to Law, I believe. They definitely have Pathways to Banking and Finance, but I think they also have Pathways to Law. So maybe have a look at that if you're interested, and that's something perhaps you could get involved in and develop that network. Luke said, does Texel have apprenticeship, and if so, what are the requirements? I would say we work with Lloyd's of London, don't we, and do the Lloyd's graduate scheme, which hopefully someone else I interview might be able to talk about that, because some of our colleagues have done it. So we take some of the Lloyd's graduates on board, but we don't have an in-house apprenticeship program yet. But perhaps that's something we might look to do in the future. What I would say, as I mentioned to Miss Amo, is I've sent through a list of all the people from Texel who have run workshops so far with you, and that they're happy to be connected with you on LinkedIn. So as Jerry and Simon mentioned on the workshop last week, it's great to develop a network. So please feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn and connect with us and see who we're connected to. And, you know, if you're interested in law, for example, by connecting with Carrie, that might open up some ideas and tell you more about different law firms that she's connected to. So start to sort of put those feelers out there maybe. Will Texel Legal Time do work experience? It's a very small team. There's only, well, three of you, 2 lawyers and 1 head of compliance, who are all very busy. But like I say, it's something we're starting to think about. We have a new head of HR in our company, and I know something she's thinking about is recruitment and how we do that and how we provide more opportunities. So if there's appetite for it, which it sounds like there might be, then it's certainly something we can start thinking about. And even if it's not, you know, a full-blown program, I'm sure there'd be scope to come in and spend half a day or a day with different people and see what they do and learn a bit more about our industry. So that's something, once we can all be back together in person, that's something we'll look to do, hopefully.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, if Texel does run a work experience scheme, or just, you know, interact with a few work experience students, then I'd be really interested to have a chat, sit down with people and talk about what I do. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
All right, I think we need to wrap up there. I mean, I had more questions, but you guys need to go to school and we need to go to work, so I think we'll have to wrap it up. But please email any other questions that you have. I'm sure Carrie would be happy to answer them. And thank you, Carrie, for your time.
You're very welcome, and yeah, do feel free to get in touch and ask me any questions you haven't answered.